What if football was never just a game? Let's take a moment to reflect. What does football mean to you? For some, it's a Saturday ritual, a pub, a pint, and cheering for the local team. For others, it's the dreams of a young kid idolizing stars like Messi or Ronaldo. For millions, it's the World Cup, flags waving, tears of joy, and nations coming together. But as fans, have we ever stopped to ask, who really controls this game we love? Football is marketed as a sport of passion, fairness, and dreams. Yet when you scratch the surface, you'll find something darker. Beneath the goals and glory, football has been entangled with power, politics, and propaganda for over a century. And today, it's not just a sport, it's a battlefield for influence, reputation, and control. So how did we get here? To understand, we need to go back to the very beginning. In the 19th century, football wasn't played under stadium lights or broadcast to millions. It was raw, grassroots, and fiercely local. It began in England's industrial towns, where factory workers and miners formed teams for weekend matches. These teams weren't just about kicking a ball, they were about identity. Take Liverpool FC, for example. Founded in 1892, the club grew out of a working-class city struggling with economic challenges. Football gave the people of Liverpool something to rally around, a way to channel their pride and frustrations. It was similar for clubs like Manchester United and Arsenal, which emerged from railway workers and factory teams. By the late 1800s, football wasn't just a pastime, it was a cultural phenomenon. But with that growth came attention from those in power, and soon, the game became a tool for influence. By 1934, football had become a global spectacle, and Benito Mussolini, Italy's fascist leader, wanted to use it to his advantage. Italy didn't just host the World Cup that year, they turned it into a propaganda event. Mussolini wanted to show the world that his vision of a disciplined, unified Italy was thriving. Every detail of the tournament was controlled, from the lavish opening ceremony to the matches themselves. Rumors swirled about referees being pressured, opponents facing mysterious travel delays, and Italian players being coached not just in football, but in loyalty to the regime. Italy went on to win the World Cup, and Mussolini paraded it as proof of his country's dominance. Football was no longer just a sport, it was a political weapon. During World War II, football's role in society became even more complex. In Nazi Germany, Adolf Hitler used sports, including football, as propaganda tools. Meanwhile, in occupied territories, football became a form of resistance. One of the most famous examples is Dynamo Kiev. In 1942, under Nazi occupation, the club's players were forced to participate in matches against German teams. Refusing to lose would mean certain death, but for the players, losing wasn't an option. These matches became symbols of defiance, as Dynamo Kiev repeatedly defeated their occupiers, even at the cost of their lives. On one side, football was being used to oppress. On the other, it was a symbol of rebellion. After the war, football became entangled in the ideological battle between capitalism and communism. The Cold War wasn't just fought with weapons and spies, it was fought on the pitch. The Soviet Union invested heavily in its football teams, believing that sporting success would showcase the strength of socialism. Clubs like Dynamo Moscow and Spartak Moscow were seen as extensions of the state. Success in European competitions wasn't just celebrated, it was used as evidence that communism was superior. In the West, football was evolving into a commercial juggernaut, especially in countries like England, Spain, and Italy. Clubs like Real Madrid became symbols of capitalist success, driven by wealthy owners and star players. Matches between Eastern and Western teams were more than just games. They were proxy wars for ideology. A goal wasn't just a point on the scoreboard, it was a statement about the superiority of one system over another. Perhaps the most infamous example of football being manipulated for political purposes came in 1978, when Argentina hosted the World Cup. At the time, Argentina was under the control of a military dictatorship led by General Jorge Videla. The regime was responsible for horrific human rights abuses, with thousands of citizens tortured, killed, or disappeared. But instead of addressing these atrocities, the government poured millions into hosting the World Cup. The tournament was a distraction, a way to project an image of unity and strength to the rest of the world. Argentina's victory in the final was celebrated as a national triumph, but for many, it was a hollow victory. The cheers of the crowd masked the cries of those suffering under the regime. The 1978 World Cup serves as a chilling reminder of how football can be weaponized to silence dissent and manipulate public perception. As football moved into the 21st century, its role shifted yet again. No longer confined to local communities or national politics, the sport became a global commodity. With billions of fans around the world, football was now a multi-billion-dollar industry, and with that came new opportunities for manipulation. In the modern era, one of the most prominent ways football is manipulated is through sports washing. This term refers to the use of sports to to improve a nation's or individual's reputation, often to distract from controversies like human rights abuses, corruption, or authoritarianism. Take Manchester City, owned by Abu Dhabi's royal family, and Paris Saint-Germain, PSG, owned by Qatar Sports Investments. These clubs have dominated European football in recent years, but their success isn't just about sporting ambition. For their owners, these clubs are tools for global influence. By associating themselves with success, glamour, and prestige, they aim to distract from criticisms of their domestic policies. The most glaring example of modern sports washing is the 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar. From the moment Qatar was awarded the tournament, it faced intense scrutiny. Allegations of bribery and corruption marred the bidding process, with FIFA officials accused of accepting millions in exchange for their votes. But the controversy didn't stop there. The treatment of migrant workers building the tournament's infrastructure sparked global outrage. Reports of poor working conditions, withheld wages, and thousands of deaths overshadowed the tournament's preparations. Despite these controversies, Qatar successfully hosted the World Cup. For the nation, the tournament was about more than football. It was a statement of power, wealth, and influence. What happens when footballers are no longer just athletes, but symbols of power, resistance, and controversy? We often see players as superstars, idolized for their skill and achievements on the pitch. They're the ones who make football magical. The dribbles, the goals, the moments that take our breath away. But in the world of politics, players are more than athletes. They become tools, ambassadors, and sometimes scapegoats. Their influence extends far beyond the pitch, often placing them in the middle of political battles they didn't ask to fight. Let's start with one of the most infamous examples, Mesut Özil, the German footballer of Turkish descent. In 2018, Özil posed for a photo with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. The image sparked outrage in Germany, where many saw it as a political endorsement of an authoritarian leader. Critics questioned Özil's loyalty to Germany, despite his years of service to the national team, including winning the 2014 World Cup. The backlash was relentless. Özil faced racism and was blamed for Germany's poor performance in the 2018 World Cup. The controversy ultimately led him to retire from international football, stating, "I am German when we win, but I am an immigrant when we lose." Ozil's story highlights the precarious position of players who straddle multiple identities. For many, football is supposed to transcend politics, but for Ozil, it became a battleground. Ozil's story isn't unique. Players have long been used as political symbols, often through endorsements or appearances that tie them to controversial figures or causes. Players from countries with authoritarian regimes may feel pressured to align themselves with political leaders. In others, they're caught off guard, not realizing the implications of their actions until it's too late. Consider Cristiano Ronaldo's infamous press conference at Euro 2020, where he moved 2 bottles of Coca-Cola and said, "Drink water." A seemingly simple act, it sent shockwaves through the world of sports sponsorship and politics, with Coca-Cola's stock value dropping significantly. While this wasn't explicitly political, it shows the immense power players hold and how their actions can have unintended consequences. While some players are used as political tools, others take a stand, using their platforms to speak out against injustice. Few players have used their influence as effectively as Marcus Rashford. The Manchester United forward became a national hero in the UK, not just for his performances on the pitch, but for his campaign to end child food poverty. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Rashford lobbied the UK government to extend free school meal programs for children in need. His efforts forced the government to reverse its decision, earning him widespread praise. But Rashford's activism wasn't without its critics. He faced backlash from politicians and media outlets, with some questioning whether footballers should involve themselves in politics. Rashford's story is a testament to the power of players to effect change, but also a reminder of the risks they take when stepping into the political arena. Not every act of resistance ends in success. For some players, speaking out comes with significant consequences. Take Hakeem Al-Araibi, a Bahraini footballer who fled his country after being tortured for criticizing the government. He sought asylum in Australia, but during a trip to Thailand in 2018, he was arrested on an extradition request from Bahrain. The global football community rallied behind Al-Araibi, with players, fans, and organizations demanding his release. After months of international pressure, he was freed and allowed to return to Australia. While Al-Araibi's story had a positive ending, it underscores the dangers faced by players who challenge powerful regimes. For many players, politics isn't something they choose, it's something imposed upon them. Players of color often find themselves at the intersection of football and politics, forced to confront racism both on and off the pitch. In 2021, after England's loss in the Euro 2020 final, Players Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho, and Bukayo Saka were subjected to a torrent of racist abuse online for missing penalties. The incident sparked widespread outrage and renewed calls for stronger measures against racism in football. For these players, the game is never just about the sport. They carry the weight of representation, often becoming symbols of progress or targets for hatred. The fight for equality in football isn't limited to race. Women's football has long been a battleground for gender equality, with players campaigning for equal pay, better facilities, and greater recognition. One of the most prominent figures in this fight is Megan Rapinoe, the U.S. women's national team player who has been outspoken on issues ranging from gender equality to LGBTQ+ rights. Rapinoe's activism has made her a polarizing figure, with critics accusing her of politicizing the sport. But for many, she represents the growing power of athletes to challenge the status quo and demand change. Players today have more influence than ever before. With millions of followers on social media, they can bypass traditional media to speak directly to fans. But with great power comes great responsibility. Players must navigate a complex world where every word, gesture, and action is scrutinized. They have the potential to inspire change, but they also risk being used as pawns in larger political games. If football is being manipulated, what does that mean for us, the fans? We cheer for our favorite teams, celebrate the moments of magic on the pitch, and wear our colors with pride. But as we've seen, football isn't just a game anymore. It's a stage for political battles, propaganda, and power plays. How do FIFA and UEFA fit into this story? Can fans reclaim the purity of the sport? And most importantly, can football ever free itself from the grip of politics? Football is nothing without its fans. The passion of the crowd, the sea of waving flags, the chants that echo through stadiums, all of it creates the magic that makes football the world's game. But fans are increasingly finding themselves at the heart of football's political struggles. Take the example of clubs like Manchester City or Paris Saint-Germain, owned by regimes accused of human rights violations. Many fans are torn. Should they support their club's success, knowing it's funded by controversial governments? The 2022 World Cup in Qatar posed a similar dilemma. Fans were thrilled to watch their nations compete on the world stage. But for many, the joy was clouded by concerns about the treatment of migrant workers and the ethical implications of the tournament. It's a difficult question. Can you separate the love of football from the politics behind it? In recent years, fans have shown that they can be a powerful force for change. Take the backlash against the European Super League in 2021, when a group of Europe's biggest clubs announced plans to create a closed competition that would exclude smaller teams. Fans erupted in protest. The outcry was immediate and widespread, forcing most of the clubs to backtrack within days. The Super League fiasco proved that fans still have the power to hold clubs accountable. But the question remains, can that same energy be used to tackle the larger issues of politics and corruption in football? If fans are the heart of football, then governing bodies like FIFA and UEFA are supposed to be its guardians. But as we've seen, these organizations are far from impartial. FIFA, the organization that oversees global football, has been plagued by scandals for decades. Allegations of bribery, corruption, and favoritism have cast a shadow over the organization's decisions, from World Cup hosting rights to rule changes. The decision to award the 2018 World Cup to Russia and the 2022 World Cup to Qatar raised eyebrows worldwide. Critics argued that these decisions were driven not by footballing criteria, but by political and financial considerations. For FIFA, the balance between promoting football and serving its own interests has always been a tricky one, and as long as politics influences the organization, the integrity of the sport will remain in question. UEFA, which governs European football, has its own set of challenges. The organization has been criticized for its handling of racism in football, its financial regulations, and its treatment of smaller clubs and nations. One of the most controversial issues is financial fair play, FFP. Introduced to prevent clubs from spending beyond their means, FFP has often been accused of favoring established clubs while punishing smaller ones. For many fans, UEFA's actions reflect a growing divide in football, one where the rich get richer and everyone else is left behind. So, where does that leave us? If football is entangled with politics, money, and power, is there any hope for the game we love? One of the brightest hopes for football lies in its grassroots. While the elite levels of the sport are dominated by money and politics, grassroots football remains closer to its roots, a game of community, passion, and pride. Across the world, Local clubs and initiatives are working to keep football accessible to everyone. These grassroots efforts remind us that, at its core, football is about more than trophies and TV rights. It's about bringing people together. Technology could also play a role in reclaiming football. Social media has already given fans a platform to hold clubs and governing bodies accountable. Imagine a future where blockchain technology is used to make football's finances more transparent, or where AI helps identify and combat corruption in governing bodies. While technology isn't a silver bullet, it offers new tools for fans and stakeholders to demand a fairer, more honest game. Players and fans will always be the lifeblood of football. As we've seen, players like Marcus Rashford and Megan Rapinoe have used their platforms to fight for change. Fans, too, have a crucial role to play. By staying informed, speaking out, and supporting initiatives that prioritize the integrity of the sport, we can push back against the forces that threaten to overshadow the beauty of the game. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.